Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is session number 4, the Omnichannel's Future 2022 from the Retail Bulletin. We've had such a good day, right? It's been absolutely brilliant to get you all together for our events. If you come back again and you've been with us for all of the sessions today, you win a badge. Well done. And if you've just joined us, fret not. You can find all of today's previous sessions in the usual way. LinkedIn and YouTube will have them all available later. And this session itself is also going to be recorded as well. This is session number 4, as I said, the future leverage of retail omnichannel brand transformation. There's a mouthful. And these are the two guys that will be unpacking it with me in the next half an hour or so. Before I introduce those guys, I should say as well that this is a big year for the Retail Bulletin. We've got lots of events coming up, so do check the Retail Bulletin website. And if you have come back to this session from the other ones today, you all have heard me say this every time, but we are very excited that the Retail Bulletin is turning 20 years old this year, 2 decades of great and compelling insight delivered to the industry. And so we thought we'd better have a party. And so we're not just going to have a party, we're going to have a 2-day conference, one of those real things with real people in a real building, touching shoulders, drinking tea and coffee together, eating biscuits and sharing great content. And it's going to be happening in the NEC Birmingham on the 8th and 9th of November. So a little bit away yet, but look for more details on the Retail Bulletin website or search the Retail Conference and you'll find more details. And because it's our 20th, of course, there's going to be a few drinks involved on the Tuesday night as well. Drinks on a Tuesday on a school night. Be like being young all over again. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our 2 panelists and who will be working with me this afternoon to wrap up a brilliant day of events. So firstly, can I welcome Ed Duggan. Ed, tell us about you, sir.
I've been in retail for probably more years than I care to remember. Before online and multi-channel, omnichannel was a thing. So I carry the burden of being a traditional bricks and mortar retailer into the digital space as well. Currently working in the furniture sector, have been there for about 10 years, which is very different to Debenhams before that, Tesco originally. So lots of different retail experience.
You're similar to me, Ed, in the sense that, you know, I'm a retailer to my boots, and I joined Radio Rentals in the late 80s. And I was there for 5 years, and there's probably half the audience don't even know Radio Rentals is. They had 1,000 stores, 1,000 stores, and that just seems nuts now, thinking back. You know, when in the days when high streets were king, and I can remember sitting on a high stool. You know, sometimes you'd get assigned to the tills, the payment area for people to pay their rent. You know, come in and pay their weekly rent for their video and their TV, and the queue would be down the shop. You know, and it just seems bizarre that those are the days when there was no other way to do business. You couldn't pay online, you couldn't shop online. It was all transacted in this physical space.
Yeah, remember it well.
It was really exciting days, though. I loved it. It was, it's where I fell in love with the industry. So yeah, you and I were both bricks and mortar men. There's nothing wrong with that.
That's where subscription models came from, wasn't it? The weekly rent pay. That's where people got that idea from, right?
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, we brought it up to the market for sure. Dan, hello. Tell us about you, sir. Who are you?
Hi, my name is Dan Saunders. I'm the retail e-commerce manager for Stanley Black & Decker in the UK. I started out selling on Amazon as a side hustle to a job that paid absolutely terribly. I was similar to you guys. I was a retail background. JJB Sports, if anyone remembers that. Again, I don't know if any of our audience is going to be old enough to remember JJB Sports as well. That's a scary thought. But it was my job to sell e-trainers then as well. But as we all know, for the stores, we got paid very, very little. So I had a side hustle selling selling on Amazon. I was selling iPhone chargers for a living that came into the digital marketing sphere, and here we are today.
Well, you're very welcome. And we were talking yesterday, weren't we, that I think some people would know your business just as Black & Decker. So how did the Stanley bit come in? Tell our audience about that.
So Stanley and Black & Decker, obviously by the name, merged to one. You know, they bought brands like Irwin, DeWalt as well, Facom as well is another one as well. There's really a lot more brands that even when I was going to do the interview process that I knew about as well, but it was it was really interesting to sort of see where the business is built and where it's going as well. I don't know if anyone saw the announcement of the sustainable tools being released on, I think it was on Bloomberg this morning. But we created a new brand within Black & Decker called the Reviva range, which is made completely of sustainable material, and it's made from recycled material as well. Wow. So it's interesting to see what is past is at standard Black & Decker, but also what the future is going to be there as well.
Every day is an education. There you go, audience. So in case you were wondering, now you know. I just adjusted my lighting there, so hopefully it's not too bright. So guys, let's crack on with this in a sec. Audience, don't forget, this is your webinar as well, so you need to get from it what you need to get from it. And to do that, you are welcome to ask as many questions as you like. There's a Q&A button on your screen somewhere. Depending on what device you're using, you'll see where your Q&A button is. Use it, and I promise you that every question that gets asked will be indeed answered. Yeah, don't feel afraid to ask us anything. We're open to your questions. You might want to pick on one of the guys, or you might just have a general question for all of us. So yeah, get involved. Let's kick in. This session really wants to explore the various approaches that are enabling retailers to meet the customer wherever and whenever. You know, and through that real omni-channel experience. And Ed, I'm going to start with you. You know, as a couple of bricks and mortars guys to our boots, what are your thoughts around that kind of optimal brand experience when it's underpinned in an omni-channel landscape?
I think in a way everything has changed in the last decade or so, although in many ways nothing has changed. I think it's important that everyone understands their own business, what their brand elements are, and in terms of what success looks like, I think it's predicated on consistency in all brands. So you can consecutively deliver well across all elements all the time. I noticed from the delegate list there's someone from McDonald's on, who are probably par excellence. Wherever you go in the globe, you get a consistent delivery of brand experience, and that is why they're so successful. So that hasn't changed, I don't think, but I wonder whether everyone has stopped the bus to realize what their brand message needs to be. I think that's really important in all organizations. So what is your brand all about? Why is it special? Does everyone in your organization properly understand all those elements? And so the delivery of that is consistent. I don't think they do, and that's a sort of piece of housekeeping I think everyone would do well to go through regularly.
Got it. And what's your view on that, Dan? Any points on that kind of whole optimal brand experience? Omnichannel.
Yeah, just I was just echoing what Ed has just said there. Really, it's about, you know, you go into a McDonald's anywhere in the world and you're going to have the same experience. You know what you're going to get. You've got you know, they've got standards for everybody, and everyone has to meet the same standards. So it's about hitting those right notes and treating every customer the same, to make sure that you're that one voice as well. Sorry, I just realized I just repeated exactly what Ed has just said back. So it's good. Valuable there whatsoever. Sorry, man.
No, that's not true. I think it underlines the point, I think, really. I mean, to stay with you, Darren, actually, let me switch the conversation slightly. How should retailers respond to their market with that key word of authenticity? Because some retailers try it and fail miserably. Some get it right on the money. What is responding authentically to your market?
I think what comes down to responding authentically to the market is having your really strong brand core message. If you truly believe your message in your heart of heart, these responses to the market will be authentic, and people will see that. When you see someone trying to chip in with something, and you can just tell it's someone on social media thought, oh, you know what, actually I'm gonna post a meme or a GIF, and I think it's gonna be interesting, it's gonna be really pulling that forward. But unless in their core belief these are true, then I really struggle to see how you can be authentic with it. I think the best way to talk, if I talk about agency side, that my background in digital marketing started with agency. There's a couple of brands called Connective 3, and there's another brand called Rise at 7. And whenever they post anything, or whenever they engage with the community. I appreciate that's more B2B than retail, but everything they do seems to echo what their brand message is and what they want to do at the heart of things as well. So I'd say, taking it probably down from the instead of the macro that Ed's described with McDonald's, it's looking down to the smaller businesses. There's 20, 30 people there, but everyone's singing from the same hymn sheet, and that's down to the belief, and that's right down to the culture as well. And I'd like to think that's the same for Stanley Black & Decker. There's when we, going back to the Reviva stuff, when we announced that that we were going to be creating sustainable material, we had a lot of pushback from competitors that were like, well, that's a waste of time. You're only doing that to tick a box. Or, like, you see how much we're investing into this. It can't just be a box ticking exercise, because it's a substantial sum going into it as well. And that's where I think authenticity shows, rather than just paying lip service, rather than signing up to a convention, actually getting your hands dirty and putting yourself out there.
I think customers know the difference, right? The consumer's got so much more savvy around brand voice and the types of messages that businesses are conveying. And I think it's easy to read between the lines, what isn't authentic messaging. Ed, I'm going to come back to you on that. In terms of, messaging and brands communicating with their audience, often that's done through social and mobile as well. Can brands afford to ignore that or not?
Yes, but you've got to be careful. I mean, I think it's horses for courses, to be honest.
But yes, they can afford to ignore it.
Yeah, I think you can. Or ignore, maybe not adopt immediately, rather than ignore. Because there's a big difference there. But I think you've got to really understand what it is your customer wants to hear at various stages of their consideration of through the journey, and then give them what they want in the format they want, when they want it. Make it an easy shopping experience. If that includes social and mobile commerce, great. If it doesn't yet, great also. You can come to it another time. I think it's very much shaping that message, having thought properly through what it is your customer wants and when they want to receive that information. Our journey is, furniture can be a very elongated consideration. It can take months and months and months to get through. At the start of that journey, you may want nothing more than a bit of inspiration. At the other end of the journey, near a transactional stage, you might want more precise, technical, delivery type information. So know what they need, know when to recognize where they are in the funnel, and serve them the right content at the right time.
Well, I'm with you actually, Ed, and it's a little bit of a pivot out of what we were talking about, but how did you communicate with your customers during the pandemic? So obviously your store estate would have been completely closed down, as were many retailers. I mean, did you see a reasonable pivot over to e-commerce and kept the business going? Was it a complete sort of wipe out of turnover? What did you communicate with your customers during the time?
Yeah, I mean, I think the communication starts internally, to make sure that everyone who's customer facing or has anything to do with the customer engagement is on message, so that everything we did was COVID secure. We were offering a limited service online, because a lot of what we do is touch, feel and engagement at the better end of the furniture market. But there was definitely a big market we could go for. Garden furniture was massive for us whilst we were locked down. But we had to tweak. Yeah, I mean, if you cast your mind back to the first lockdown, the weather was amazing. And literally every piece of garden furniture we could lay our hands on, we were selling. So that all worked brilliantly well. I think there was something of a, if you like, a global nesting type phenomenon went on inside the house as well. And the research phase for that happened when people had time on their hands, weren't going on holiday, they're sitting on their lumpy bumpy sofa at home, or they're decorating. So the consideration phase as part of the journey was really, really important. Feeding that through digital marketing, even though the store was closed, was massive. And then when it opens, and since then, to be honest, all the way through, I think it was something like June the 2nd, I think it was burnt in my memory, of 2020. It's been really, really busy since. but a lot of that came from feeding that early funnel consideration phase with the right content at the right time.
It feels weird, doesn't it, looking back when you sort of think back to, we had 2 years ago, we were still kind of thinking it was someone else's problem across the, in another country. And then in a few weeks' time, 2 years ago, it suddenly became very much our problem.
Very real, yeah.
It's certainly not something we all want to live through again, I know that much. Thank you for that. I was just interested because furniture particularly, I would imagine, was one of those most squeezed areas for dealing with a massive loss of trade very quickly overnight.
And I think that, sorry, just to add to that point as well,
yeah.
Knowing your customer, that is, if anyone takes anything away from this talk at all, know your customer is the biggest thing. What Ed just said there is the biggest thing you should come away from today. Going back, there'll be a few people that work in digital marketing that will say, oh, actually, no, Ed, everything's going to be mobile first. But I completely agree with him in the fact that, Amazon at the moment still gets 45% of its traffic through desktop. There's always going to be people that want. So if you know your customer, you know that nearly half of them are still buying through the desktop, then you want to make sure your approach is to desktop, but with also the mobile first indexing as well. So it's I couldn't have said it better myself. I wish I'd have said it first.
That's a really interesting point, actually, because I'm almost the opposite of that. So I do most of my Amazon stuff, and I do shop on Amazon more than I'd like, actually, because convenience is king, right? And so I have a problem with Amazon on many levels, but I also succumb to their convenience. So I get more Amazon passes. But it's the one retailer where I'll just do it in a couple of clicks on my phone because I feel confident that I know that just is the way I shop there. But I do most of my other online shopping at a good old desktop because I always have in my mind that the experience is going to be too clunky on a mobile and I don't trust it. And that's probably me being cynical and haven't even tried, but I still revert to desktop for most of my online shopping.
What you get with Amazon is back to the things we've covered. You get consistency of experience. All of their elements, they've got choice, they've got, from good, better, best architecture. Yeah. They've got the lot and they do it all really well. And as a result, we all keep getting drawn back there because not everyone else, myself included, we're not as consistent execution-wise as they are.
My biggest beef with Amazon is always one small box in another massive box, and it just, they keep saying at it and they just don't, it doesn't get any better, but it's,
that is tough. On saying, and on that point as well, actually, I think, Ed, you and I were talking about logistics yesterday and the costing there. I think that industry, if anyone's from there at the moment, needs to be keeping an eye on Amazon because they've got logistics to ship anything and everything all the way around the world. And once people get used to the FBA culture, if I go to say, right, all my stock's now going to be delivered by Amazon rather than this other service provider, I know it's going to get to my customer the next day, but they're going to do it for a fraction of price. It's something that I think the logistic world needs to look out for, because not only can you pay through Amazon online through Amazon Pay, which is a familiar payment platform, most people have got the card saved already on that platform, but if then they start to take care of the logistics as well, which they've got in place probably better than anyone in the world right now, it's an interesting time to be in that sector as well. I'm just glad I don't have to deal with it like you had at the moment. Otherwise, I'd have even less hair.
Yeah, I think for retail, what's been fascinating over the last 5 years for me is the dare I say, some of the industry journals, consultants, you name it, have been forcing a sort of one-size-fits-all type message down retailers on businesses' throats. So you have to be mobile first, you have to be 24-hour delivery looks slow. And I think horses for courses is such a simple statement, but I think it works because you can quite easily chase your tail, blow an absolute fortune on all of these elements of your business model, and you may or may not need to do them. We've seen no diminution in customer appetite despite lead times going out significantly because of shipping issues. Yeah. So it is definitely, don't get seduced by someone who tells you it has to be X, Y, or Z. Work out what your own business model and your customers really want and work backwards from there.
That's a really great observation, Ed, I think. Thank you. It's a nice segue actually to what I'm going to talk to Dan about now as well. So Dan, partnerships actually. So, talking about being seduced by, we need to do this and we need to do that. Some retailers, I think, enter into partnerships that are brilliant, and it's an obvious bedfellow. And then sometimes you see a retail partnership and you're like, I'm not sure I quite get that. What's your view on partnerships? Are they a vital lifeline for brands?
I'm going to give a typical SEO answer for any SEOs on the call, but it really depends. Again, going back to what Ed said about your customer, for me, it's a case of there was one partnership that came up yesterday, the Greggs and the Primark one, and at first I was like, is that just just two brands that are in the news a lot? Is that just them combining it? But then when I looked at the persona breakdown for Primark customers versus Gregg customers, the overlap was there, so it made sense. So if it makes sense to go into partnership with somebody, yes, 100% do it. But don't just do it for the sake of, oh, you know what, we're just going to do it. And that goes back to that authenticity piece. As if I said, right, okay, if I suddenly became the CEO of Stanley Black & Decker, and because I'm more of a rugby fan than I am a football fan, I take all of our money in terms of sponsorship and put it into rugby. That's not being authentic anymore. It's what my vision is rather than what the company's been built up with and everyone else's peace of mind, if that makes sense.
It does make sense.
So so it's the partnerships have to make sense, and there's got to be an overlap. Now going back to before, everything that I like to do is data. It's got to be data fed. So if the data's there, so you can say, right, okay, my customer segment is 18 to 21 year olds. They have this amount of income. They spend on these things and this and this. So if Greggs and Primark have got that overlap where they say, actually, our customers tend to go to Greggs or then go to Primark's, or when there's on the high street, they're actually right next to each other. That partnerships make sense. Otherwise, to me, it just seems like a PR stunt, and then people look into it and think, why the hell are you doing that?
Yeah.
Like you said before, people are savvy enough now to say, actually, what's the point of that?
What would be, I'll put you on the spot a bit here, what would be a good example of a great partnership?
Oh, that's a very good question.
That's open to.
I was going to say, ask Ed that one, and I'll come back to you. I'll come back with my idea in about 20 minutes or something like that.
Yeah,
it's hard though, isn't it?
I think there are some obvious sectors where the complement is really strong. So if you take in-store food services, what do I know about providing an in-store dining experience? Very little. So having a partnership with someone who can provide that, be it Next have got Costa in a lot of their stores because they're a great brand, know how to do it very well, and it saves Next getting into a sector that they probably don't want to get into. If you go into John Lewis on Oxford Street, they've got a great florist on site, complementary, where the overlap of propositions work really well. So I think there are some natural areas where, from a retailing perspective, you can do it, and it doesn't need to be that threatening, if you like, to either brand or that risky. This is how much I am with the bricks and mortar, because I didn't even know there was a Costa in Next. Now, this is because I'm like you, Darren. I've done the majority of my shopping online, and ever since supermarkets started offering click and collect, so I don't go shopping when I'm hungry, I'm usually not in there anymore either. The first one that came to my mind was Guinness partnering with the Six Nations, because every time I'm watching the Six Nations, all the lads are having a Guinness there, and that's literally the only partnership that came to mind when you said that.
Yeah, it's a funny one, and it's when also brands come out of their current positioning and try to find another new market through partners. I'll give you an example here. I used to be at Hotel Chocolat very proudly as well, and still very good friends with all the guys there. I was their retail lead for 5 years. And in my day, we did wholesale for the first time through John Lewis. And that was a really good partner, actually. It made sense, same demographics, same shoppers. And actually, it was a really lovely complementary relationship and partnership. Christmas just gone, the Hotel Chocolat Belvetizer was half price in Morrison's. And it's a big departure from the days that I was there. And for me, it doesn't sit massively well with me from a brand point of view. For reach and commercials and all of that, I get it. but for me, it was about the brand. And I think sometimes partnerships are sometimes sacrificial to brand values. And I think that's a really careful one to be careful of. We all know what happened to Thornton's. If we use a chocolate example in the UK, I'm old enough to remember when Thornton's was a bit posh. And Thornton's then suddenly started selling their products at places like Esso garages and every supermarket you could name with no price parity. And then you'd have the same box of chocolates for £5 with your petrol and Esso that was being sold for £10 in their own retail stores. That's a great example of, way to wreck your own retail estate. So, yeah, I think partnerships and collaborations are vital, actually, is my view overall, as long as they protect the brand and they make sense to the consumer as well.
I think some of the examples, sorry, Darren, some of the examples recently have been the consequence of pressure of being overspaced. So if you take the department stores, were chasing something that gave them a more productive return per square foot than they were generating themselves. And then you end up with a ridiculous example of John Lewis bringing in a third-party furniture business to replace its own furniture business, which it used to be brilliant at. That feels a bit odd from the outside, I have to say, although, who am I to criticise John Lewis?
Well, I'm sure they would be open to the feedback as well. Their current struggles are, well documented, but they still remain retailers to be reckoned with, absolutely, and never write them off, because they are, I'm hoping, firmly part of our retail story for a very, very long time to come. They strike me as being fairly resilient, but it's a great example. Good conversation. In terms of this customer whenever, wherever piece, and I want to sort of stick with this, who does it well theme, and who's doing that well, who is reachable, and forget Amazon, we're going to ban them from this part of the conversation. Yeah. But which retailer is accessible, easy, transactional, has got good brand voice? Think of some good examples out there of who you think is doing a good job.
I think Lidl are smashing it at the moment in time. I went from when they actually came into the UK, and they've just expanded and just done so well. And then, you look at like their social media campaigns versus any TV adverts they do. They just own who they are and what they're doing as well. Even there was even the joke. I can't remember if it was Aldi or Lidl, but there was even the TV advert around how fast the cashiers swipe the items, and they embrace who they are. And I thought, and then you look at their Christmas adverts, and you look at some of the social media battles that they have with people, and you'll think that is a really strong tone of voice that's from the ground up. And as we were talking about before, it was an authentic tone of voice, as opposed to a multinational corporation that's just hired someone for social media that they just picked at random. There's someone there that said, yes, I have got 30 years of social media experience, even though it's only been around for 20 years, and et cetera, and then they're just coming along with the trends, whereas it seems like Aldi and Lidl at the moment are setting the trends for them. And
I think actually that sector overall deserves a nod from all of us in terms of everything it's had to deliver in the last couple of years as well. But I think, two great examples. Aldi actually have just opened their version of Amazon Go in Greenwich. It's worth a look. I had a look on Monday, actually. I'm not sure everyone understood it from downloading the app and trying to get in point of view, because a lot of very confused customers. But this kind of shop and go concept, the Amazon Go one in Canary Wharf, is amazing. But they're having a go at that now as well, which was really interesting to see. And Amazon might always set the tone, but it's great to see other retailers having a go at some of that stuff as well. What about you, Ed? Who's doing that whenever, wherever piece well?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Hotel Chocolat. I think they're in almost everything they do. They're first class, really. I wish I'd known the Velvetizer was half price at Morrison's as well. In our space, Loaf a very good proposition. The brand tone of voice is consistent. The personality of the business comes through really well. Very nicely, tightly curated product selection, well executed, easy to navigate, fun website. So Loaf probably do it as well in our space, as I've seen.
Yeah, they definitely seem to have really raised their profile in the last couple of years, because Made.com sort of had a really good positioning in that space, and they seem to have been frog leaped by Loaf a little bit as well. But yeah, that's a really good example. We do have a question, actually. I need to just, by the way, we had some nice comments, great insight so far, guys, so thank you. This one's, I'm not quite sure it quite fits the webinar, but we'll ask it anyway. And either of you feel free to answer. Do you have different inventory files for each of your sales channels, or are you moving towards a consolidated file to supply customers in the fastest, most economical way? So have you got separate stock files by channel, or is it all in one? Ed, you put your hand up there.
We're all together.
All together.
Pricing as well. So I know there are, historically, there were some retailers who had differential pricing between online and offline, which is bonkers beyond belief. Similarly with stock, you're just going to get yourself in a whole lot of trouble, I believe. If you're calling off multiple stock, you can have more than you need to start with. So I would recommend single stock file, single location where possible, and single pricing.
It's that single view data piece, right? All in one place, which ultimately benefits the customer.
Yeah. It does give you challenges in terms of understanding your online, offline sales differences. Why does something work online that doesn't offline, and vice versa? We don't always get to those answers, but keeping it simple, I think, has got to be the way forward.
I echo everything that Ed's just said there, and it's a case of it's keeping your tone of voice. And, if we're advertising with our other retailers, it's about keeping our tone of voice that also matches their tone of voice as well. So keeping it as one voice makes life a lot easier for us. And as Ed said, it makes it a lot easier for us to, on the other side of things, it gives us a sense of change one part of it. We can then track what the differences are, as opposed to if you changed a lot of it and everyone was using different information, you wouldn't know what was working and what wasn't.
Good stuff, guys. Well, we've already nearly burned through 35 minutes, so I'm going to ask you guys for, I guess, closing positions, really, in terms of what would be your nuggets or your closing words at the end of a long day for the Retail Bulletin, certainly around this sort of wherever, whenever topic. What is the best piece of advice that you guys would share as seasoned retailers with our audience?
I'm going to repeat myself. Get really close to your customers' wants and needs and how they vary through the funnel, and work back from there. I
agree. I think, one of the problems, we had this conversation on the previous webinar. One of the last questions we had was, how do you get the board to be customer-centric? And I said, get them out of the boardroom, was my answer. Because I still am astonished at how many retail execs still aren't close enough to their stores, their website, and their end user. And I think you can learn so much from just getting out and talking to your teams. If you're lucky enough to have a retail estate, there's a whole ton of rich learning out there for you. By going to talk to your team, stand on the floor and listen to what customers are saying and talk to customers. And I used to love it. My favorite thing. I used to hate being in the office. My favorite place was in stores.
Sorry, Darren, I know you're short time. We went through an exercise recently of asking all of our in-store furniture sales consultants, what are the questions customers ask? What are the uncertainties they've had over a transaction? Do we then reflect that properly online? And do our filters reflect that? And we found a load of lessons we learned very, very quickly.
No, it's great to hear. Thank you, Ed, and good luck to you and the guys at Fishpools as well. Are you in the office today?
Yeah, since April, May last year.
Okay, where's your office based?
Yeah, in Waltham Cross.
Okay.
Junction 25 of the M25, sale now on.
Cool. Well, look, wherever Dan's been today, it's looked like it was quite sunny on you today. It's been great. It's grey in central London. Where are you, Dan?
I'm in sunny Doncaster.
Well, you've got plenty of sun in Doncaster.
I know.
Today.
It's a blessing and a curse. I'm too cheap to put blinds up in this window until it's springtime. Well, on the other side of that, as everyone at home has probably seen, there's pretty much a lot of glare coming from this bald head when it gets at the right time. So it's one of the benefits where we are at the moment with Standard Black & Decker is that they took me on to be 100% remote, whereas I wouldn't have had this opportunity before because the head office is in Slough, and I've got a 4.5 hour commute there next week, and I wouldn't imagine doing that every day.
Excellent. Well, listen, over to you for some closing thoughts. Share some final thoughts for our audience to think about.
I really, really wish I'd got in before Ed with the know your customer piece. I really, really wish I do, because I say it when I do talk to everywhere else. That's like the line. It's actually if I was ever going to get a tattoo, it would be that. And the last one is actually a quote from Sir Arthur Conan Doyle: "Is data, data, data. I can't make bricks without clay." Everything we do in this moment in time has got to be, with budgets being constraints around the board, prices going up, logistics prices, stock prices for actual materials. Everything we do has got to show a high ROAS. If you want to try something new, show the data behind it as to why you do it. There's so much data out there that you get from Google, from your own stores, from even on your own website. But like I said, the bricks and mortar stores in particular, speaking to your actual salespeople on the ground that know this stuff inside out. There's so much data out there that you can pretty much build anything you want around it.
Sounds good. And thank you, Dan, for joining us and taking time out of your diary today. Both of you for taking time out of your busy schedules. These gentlemen have just wrapped up what's been a terrific day of 2022 comeback for the Retail Bulletin. We've had 5 brilliant events today. Thank you so much. Thanks again to our sponsors, Find Logic, Limworks and Eyes-On for their support throughout the panels today. It's been absolutely superb and beautifully signed off by these gentlemen. Ed and Dan, thank you both so much for your time. This recording will be available. That's it for us today. We're back on the 6th of April with part 1 of a digital transformation webinar. There's going to be 3 parts to that throughout the year. They're spaced apart by a few months: 6th of April, 6th of July, 16th of November. But yeah, 6th of April is the one to worry about for now. And don't forget, put that date in your diary for that real live in-person conference on the 8th and 9th of November at Birmingham NEC. For now, Ed and Dan, thank you again. Thank you to all of you for your support of the Retail Bulletin today. Over and out. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.